Good morning to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club. I won't engage you in any small talk or any foreplay this morning because I have a really interesting book to take you through, and it's entitled Out of the Maze by an author named Spencer Johnson. It's a book which focuses on the inevitability of change in our lives and why we should embrace it and leverage it. Because we should acknowledge, I guess from the beginning, that each and every one of us are at a different stage of growth and development in our lives, and we're all called to live our lives as best we can and to make the most of the opportunities as and when they present themselves. So in our lives, we basically have, according to this author and to this book, we've got three choices. We can go back and live in the past and think of the past and live with nostalgia, what it was like in the 50s and the 60s with mum and dad and uncles and aunts. We can live in the present, stand still and do nothing, or we can try and move forward and adapt and adopt to the different changes, i.e. learn to surf when the waves come in, depending on the weather conditions, and make the most of what we have. I have a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, named Makis Boutsinas, who a number of months ago expressed a philosophy which I thought was very apt and beautiful. And he said that depending on where you live and who you live with and what you do in your life, you've got to adapt and adopt to the situation and the customs of the country. We're at the Opera House when he mentioned this to me, and he said that you can't be a Greek living in Australia and expect to be in Greece. You know, because Australia is a different country, has a different culture, has different strengths, has different capabilities. So you've got to learn to make the most of the strengths of Australia. And as we said, you can't expect Australia to be like Greece, and you can't expect Greece to be like Australia. So if you're going to make the most and leverage and enjoy your time here in Australia, then you basically need to live like an Australian, of course overlaying it with some of the strengths and capabilities that you have from your other homeland culture. So this book, we'll move on to this book now, and this book offers a parable, a metaphor, an analogy on the concepts of happiness, and it covers Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, what do we have to do to become fulfilled with our lives at the different times of our lives? And he introduces two characters, and the characters are miniature people, imaginary people, comical people named Hem and Haw, who find themselves in a maze. And the maze represents life, but they're in a maze, walking around together in the maze. And I guess the first thing you need to do in life is you need to learn how to survive. You need to cover off your needs. And the first need that we have, and according to the author for Hem and Haw, is that they need to eat. So Hem and Haw, they're in the maze and they discover a cheese station, a place where they can sit there and indulge and eat and cover off their basic needs in life. And the food there comes every single day. They find their cheese station and there's lots and lots of cheese to eat. So they sit down and they just stay there. They don't continue their way through the maze, but they just stay where they are because it fulfills them. It brings them immense happiness. They've got all the cheese in the world. It's similar to ourselves when we're young, where we come across our school friends, our uncles and aunts, our family circle, and we've got all that we need. But what happens to Hem and Haw is that one day the cheese supply just stops. It dries up. And they don't have any more cheese. You know, they've stopped exploring and they've settled down and they're complacent and entitled. But one day that cheese disappears. And it's a metaphor of life, you know, that, you know, if you stop your journey, if you stop your progress, if you become complacent, if you become entitled, if you settle down and you stop exploring and taking on adventure, sooner or later, the happiness that you used to, the things that are familiar to you, that you love, one day will disappear. So what happens in this situation is Hem and Haw are given a choice, and each of these mythical sort of people makes their own choice. So Haw sees that there's no more cheese here and believes that there will be no more cheese here. The cheese supply has stopped. The fulfillment, the happiness is no longer present here. So he goes off in search of a new supply of cheese, whereas Hem believes that the cheese supply will come back. His belief causes him to stay where he is and to wait patiently for the cheese to rematerialize. But the cheese never materializes again. And in life, a lot of us are in a relationship, are in a job, have a circle of friends, have a health condition, and a number of things in our lives that give us fulfillment at some point in time. And at some point, then we wake up one day and we say, well, this job is not giving us the fulfillment that we deserve, that we need, and you feel depressed. But you know, that hunger that you feel causes you to either try and stick it out for a little bit longer, or to go off and look and search for more cheese. But in the meantime, you do feel abandoned. You feel an abandonment, how your partner or how your other career mates, your school friends, have moved off and abandoned you. But we all need to understand that we have a cheese in life, something that nourishes us and fulfills us. But this, once again, is an analogy. So the lesson number one to come from this book is that we need to take things, we should stop taking things for granted. And when we lose things, we can't simply continue to cling on to the past. One of the big problems that we have, or we will face in our lives, is that life is constantly changing, is constantly morphing, and we will lose things. And the more you cling on to things, the more painful our lives will become. Because change is difficult, loss is difficult, because it means the end of the world that we once knew. And some people will refuse to move on until reality compels them to move on. And hunger sets in, and pain and suffering sets in. And they go off in search of more cheese, because cheese is all they really know. Cheese is the thing that fulfills them, that quells their hunger. So in our story, in our metaphor, Hem eventually has to move on, but he's cautious and afraid of the unknown. But he continues to look for cheese, and only cheese, because all he knows is cheese. That cheese will give him the fulfillment and the happiness that he looks. But just like the maze, life has many dead ends, many dark corners, many unknowns. And to be realistic in our lives, nobody's been to the future. Nobody's been to the end of the maze, or dare I say, has ever gone outside the maze. So we need to explore all the areas of the maze, but because of our fears, because of our beliefs, we end up worried that the dark areas, the scary parts, could be dangerous to us. But we need to understand that life and the maze of life has many and numerous paths to follow. So on his journey, Hem, while he's moving on and looking for cheese, falls asleep one day. He's tired, he's angry, he's worried, and he falls asleep. He's exhausted. And then one day he wakes up and he surrounds himself. He finds himself surrounded by all of these red things, which he doesn't know what they are. They look like something that he could possibly eat. They smell like something that would be interesting, but he doesn't know what they are, because all he is used to, all he knows, is cheese. But what those red things actually are apples, and they are left by another mythical mini person called Hope. But these apples, just like in our lives, represent an alternative source of food, an alternative source of fulfillment, an alternative source of happiness, which will give us strength. So Hor eventually makes a decision to eat these apples, and they give him the strength that he needs to continue on. But just like many people in life, even though he has found a new fulfillment, he's found a new way of living, he's found a new energy source, old habits die hard, and he still continues to live in the past. He still continues to live with nostalgia, and he uses his energy source to continue to look for cheese, even though it's unproductive and damaging. And we resent our present because we still live with that nostalgia, that yearning for what we once knew and what once fulfilled us. But the lesson from this metaphor, from this parable, is that you need to understand, we all need to understand, that there are many sources of joy, fulfillment and happiness in one's path, in one's life. And you don't have to stick to the cheese. There are other things that hope bring us, that we can learn to fulfill us and to bring us happiness. And even though we find that fulfillment, we don't have to continue to waste our time going backwards and looking at our past for the old way of happiness. We can adopt and adapt to the new world, because there are different sources of happiness. And if you depend on something, or if you depend on someone, you are wiring yourself for pain, as we need to continue to change and to learn to let go of the past and we need to change our beliefs and be grateful for the present and for the new discoveries that we come across. Because things only occur in our minds. Let me just head off and get on this train and we'll continue our book summary. Are you going now? 3 more minutes? Okay, thank you. So I'll just stand in the carriage here and continue the book summary. So what the author here is saying is that we are controlled in many ways by our beliefs, but our beliefs can empower us and they can disempower us. Our beliefs can be a trap or they can free us. So we have the power to choose our beliefs and how we see our world and how we engage our worldview. So as we saw in this metaphor, hope brought a new fulfillment to Hem. But hope also spoke to Hem and said, you know, you can continue your path through the maze, but you can also look to escape the maze altogether. Because the maze to many people represents their entire world. It's the rat race that keeps us going, keeps us moving along, keeps us trapped in a particular worldview and in a particular world. But what we're learning from this book here is that hope also tells us that there is a life and there is a world outside of the maze, but it requires us to make a leap of faith, to have an openness to possibility. So Hem takes the advice of hope, and together they look to escape the maze as they know it. But before that, he overcomes his fears and decides to explore the dark corners, the places, and embraces the unknown, and continues on that path, but continues with a different belief. The new belief is that the maze that he's in is not dangerous. It's just a part of life, a part of his life. And together with hope, they continue to look, to search, and to journey through the maze. And we all have to understand, as I said before, that nobody has been to the future. Nobody knows what each person's life is going to take them, or where it's going to take them. But hope actually eventually takes him to a door, to a place that takes him outside of the maze, takes him to a place called paradise. So the lessons from this parable is that we don't need to give up too quickly. We need to follow, where possible, the road less travelled, to take and make the difficult decisions. And what actually happens is once Hem makes that leap of faith and takes the road less travelled and continues his journey, he's reunited on the outside of the maze with Hem. So you need to, I guess, follow your dreams, be courageous in life, and not to give up too quickly, and not to give in, I guess, is the biggest lesson, to false beliefs that hold us back. Because at the end of the day, many people live with irrational fears, which are the chains and the locks which hold them back. But we need to learn, we need to appreciate, and we need to be taught the key lessons in life from our journey, that less than 10% of our fears are actually real. Less than 10% will materialise and become actually a problem. So we shouldn't live in fear. We shouldn't be chained in fear, and basically we should travel with confidence the road less travelled, knowing that each person's future is unique to them. Just like we've had a different past, we're going to live a different present. We're also going to experience a different future, but we will figure it out. We will be able to conquer the road ahead. And the big lesson is that we didn't need to find new cheese or more cheese. There are other ways to fulfill our lives and to live a happy life. So I guess that's probably the final point from this book. But an interesting point on this author is that this author actually contracted pancreatic cancer, but rather than be bitter, be unhappy, be sad, and to limit his life, he actually wrote a thank you letter to his cancer, because the cancer actually gave him an opportunity to live the last moments of his life where he could connect at a deeper level with his family, with his friends, with his creator, and to live his life with immense fulfillment. So for him, his cancer was the wake-up call. This book was an opportunity to reach out to people that he didn't know, from the same generation, from the same time and space, and from a future time and space, and to tell them to not live in the past, to connect where possible with family and friends, and understand that fulfillment comes in different forms, and we're all at different phases and stages of our lives, of our growth and development, and we're all called to make the most of each and every opportunity as and when it presents itself. So thank you very much for joining me on this journey of discovery. A very tricky topic today, but a very deep and powerful topic. So let's live, learn and pass it on. Let's make the most of these learnings and incorporate them into our inventory of skills, so we can continue the journey and connect more deeply and more better.
This station is museum.
So we'll chat again. Take care, yasas, and bye for now. I just hope I'm on the right train. I'll find out at the next station whether or not it goes to Mascot or if it goes somewhere else. Take care, yasas.
Doors
bye for
closing.
now.
Please.